Hey guys, Madame Ram, starring Toni Collette, tells the dramatized true story of Georgia Frontier, a former entertainer turned owner and heavy hitter in the boys' club that is the NFL. After her husband's mysterious death, she shocks everyone by inheriting the LA Rams and taking the reins of a major sports franchise. Relying on her wit and astrological charts to make decisions, she turns the NFL on its head and to this day remains one of the most beloved, despised, and controversial figures in modern sports. You guys, I started listening to this and I am absolutely hooked. The twists and turns, I didn't see any of them coming, and I have so many questions. I cannot wait to continue to tune in. The woman who went from singer to NFL owner, defying expectations and shaking up the world of professional football. Madame Ram dives into her relentless quest for respect, power, and a championship trophy. This isn't your typical sports story. Follow Georgia Frontier as she navigates a male-dominated industry using star charts and sheer determination to make her mark in history. Whether you love football, powerful struggles, or just a good scandal, Madame Ram has it all. Ambition, mystery, and the unforgettable legacy of a woman who refused to stay on the sidelines. Madame Ram, the woman who took on a man's world and won. Follow Madame Ram on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening now.
Holy shit!
What you've just heard is one of the many deaths from the monkey, the new major motion picture from Osgood Perkins, Stephen King, and James Wan. Experience it in theaters everywhere this Friday, because everybody dies, and that's life. Let's have some fun.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Big Mad True Crime, where we get big mad over true crime. I'm your host, Heather Ashley, and today's case is that of Pewaukee, Wisconsin, which is in the Milwaukee metropolitan area. Small talk sucks, so let's dive in. Lynn Hernan was known for her compassion and this boundless generosity she had. She was the kind of person who would literally give you the shirt off of her back, but she wasn't just beautiful on the outside. Her inner beauty was just something else. As she got older, Lynn pursued her passion, which was becoming a hairstylist and hopefully one day owning a salon of her own. Outside of work, she loved spending time with her cats, soaking up the sun on beach visits, and entertaining guests with her amazing cooking. Lynn was also deeply committed to helping stray animals find homes. Although Lynn never had any children of her own, she kept a close-knit circle of friends and family. According to the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, by 2015, Lynn was in her late 50s when she started suffering from severe health issues that just wouldn't go away. Her condition became so debilitating that she had to rely on her friend Jennifer for care. In February of 2018, after a hospital stay, doctors recommended that Lynn hire a caregiver to help her at home in Pewaukee, Wisconsin. Lynn naturally turned to Jennifer's daughter, Jessie Krasuski, for help. Lynn had known Jessie since she was about 8 or 9 years old. Jessie accepted the responsibility and started checking on Lynn and taking her to appointments. Lynn grew to trust Jessie so much that she eventually handed over the keys to her home and made Jessie her power of attorney. Lynn's health continued to deteriorate, and on September 21st, 2018, she was hospitalized again. A week later, she was released and returned home. But then on October 3rd, at approximately 4:55 p.m., Jessie called the police and reported that she had found 62-year-old Lynn unconscious and not breathing in her home. According to court documents, when an officer arrived, he found Lynn pale and unconscious, lying in a recliner in the living room. The officer noted a large amount of crushed medication on her chest and a plate directly to her left with what appeared to be more crushed medication on it. Multiple medications were scattered on the ground, and at least 5 medication bottles and an empty water bottle were on the table beside her. Based on these initial observations, the officer suspected that Lynn might have died from an intentional or accidental drug overdose. The officer spoke to Jessie, who described her relationship with Lynn. She said that she was Lynn's caregiver, power of attorney, and only friend. She claimed that Lynn didn't really have any other friends or family besides her. Jessie stated that Lynn had been sick for months and was frequently in and out of the hospital. Most recently, she'd been released on the 28th. Jessie said that the hospital wanted Lynn to stay for rehabilitation, but Lynn refused. Jessie explained that Lynn was constantly worried about the possibility of having to leave her home for medical reasons, and Lynn constantly told Jessie that she didn't want to go to a nursing home, always reminding her of where the important papers were. Jessie told the officer that Lynn's behavior in the week leading up to her death was strange. Lynn's medication seemed off when she checked them, with Lynn either having too many pills or not enough. Jessie also mentioned that Lynn supposedly threw away hospital bills while saying they wouldn't get her money. According to court documents, Jessie expressed that she believed there was a possibility that Lynn was suicidal, but she also mentioned that Lynn really loved her cats. She worried about them and wouldn't want to leave them behind. The officer then spoke to one of Lynn's neighbors, who said that she didn't believe Lynn was suicidal and had never gotten that impression from her. The neighbor confirmed that Lynn had recently been hospitalized for a short period, but she'd returned home before her death.
Did you know that parents rank financial literacy as the #1 most difficult life skill to teach? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app for families. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn to earn, save, and spend wisely, and parents can rest easy knowing their kids are learning about money with guardrails in place. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/Spotify.
Lynn's body was taken to the medical examiner's office, where her death was ruled a drug overdose. For some reason, it seems like police didn't attempt to speak with anyone else who knew Lynn. They simply accepted Jessie's word that Lynn had no other close friends or family and that she was suicidal. However, the truth was that Lynn did have close friends and family, and they were all shocked by the cause of her death. She was not suicidal, and she wasn't known to take drugs, let alone overdose on them. Lynn's loved ones couldn't sit by and let this injustice stand, and some of them decided to go to the police themselves. According to court documents and 48 Hours, Lynn's ex-boyfriend Jim, who stayed very close to her, went to the police and expressed doubt that her death was really a drug overdose. Jim had known Lynn for a really long time and didn't believe that she would intentionally or unintentionally overdose. He said that while Lynn was frustrated with her health problems, she still made time to visit Jim, often bringing treats and other thoughtful items with her. Jim mentioned that he last saw Lynn about a month before her death, but they'd spoken not long before she passed away. He explained that he had called Lynn's house and Jessie answered the phone. She rudely told him, "Do not use this phone, don't call this number ever again, don't worry about Lynn." Confused and concerned, Jim felt like something was wrong and he decided to investigate. A few days later, Lynn called Jim from the hospital, and they made plans to get together when she got back home. But unfortunately, that was the last time he heard from her. Jim told detectives that he first learned of Lynn's death from Jessie. She called him and said, "I have some bad news. Lynn committed suicide. And by the way, we're gonna have a dinner for her on the 13th at the Open Flame restaurant." Jessie delivered this news all in the same breath without any signs of emotion, which struck Jim as bizarre and also a little bit unbelievable. But Jessie assured him that Lynn really was gone. Jim came to believe that Lynn was dead. However, he refused to believe that she actually committed suicide. When speaking with detectives, Jim voiced his suspicions that Jessie and her mother, Jennifer, were actually involved in Lynn's death. He said that after Jessie entered Lynn's life, she and her mom began using Lynn's belongings and spending her money. Following Lynn's death, they were selling her property and using her Jeep, which Jim believed was actually meant to go to Lynn's nephew, Anthony. Although Anthony wasn't Lynn's actual nephew by blood, he was the son of a close friend, and Lynn had been in his life since he was young. Before the interview ended, Jim mentioned one more thing, that prior to Lynn's death, she had confided in him, saying, "I don't know what's happening to my money." I mean, it was just disappearing and she couldn't explain why. Lynn's cousin also went to the police expressing concerns about the circumstances surrounding her death. He told detectives that within days of Lynn's death being ruled a drug overdose, Jessie started legal proceedings on Lynn's will, which just so happened to leave her entire estate, estimated to be worth about $150,000, to Jessie. Lynn's cousin thought it was really weird that Lynn left her whole estate to Jessie and not to anyone else like Anthony. He said that because of these suspicions, he conducted a background check on Jessie and discovered a bunch of convictions for fraud and forgery. Now, this raised a lot of red flags, and he wanted to make sure that Lynn's will was real and not forged by Jessie herself. Detectives began looking into Jessie, and they discovered that she did indeed have a lengthy history of forgery and fraud. It seemed like she almost had an addiction to ripping people off. According to court documents, in March of 2010, Jessie was arrested for misappropriating ID information to obtain something of value. As it turns out, between approximately November of 2009 and February of 2010, Quick Loans received 8 loan applications submitted in a short period of time from the same computer IP address linked to Westside Healthcare Clinic in Milwaukee, where Jessie happened to work. 2 of those applications resulted in credit being obtained in the names of 2 victims, totaling $4,000. Both victims figured out what was going on, and they went to the police. A detective interviewed Jessie regarding these offenses, and she admitted that throughout her job at the clinic, she had taken patients' personal identifying information and used it to submit applications for online loans through both Quick Loans and CheckCity.com. She confessed to receiving $4,000 from 2 loans. Jessie was arrested for these offenses and was released on bail. As a condition of her release, she was ordered not to go to any loan establishments, but Jessie could not stay away. Court documents state that on July 16, 2010, Jessie went to a payday loan store and tried to secure a car title loan. She turned in a loan application form in her mom's name. She said her name was Jennifer, and she wanted $2,500 in cash, along with a check for $6,350. However, this scheme did not work, and officers were called to the scene. Jessie initially told them that she was Jennifer. However, officers checked with a detective familiar with Jessie, who confirmed that she was actually Jessie and was out on bail for a felony. Jessie then claimed she had permission from her mom to apply for the loan. As part of the investigation, Jennifer was interviewed, and according to court documents, she was obviously upset with Jesse and said that Jesse had been ruining the entire family's lives. Jesse had also stolen her social security card, identification, a book of personal checks, and the title to her 2008 Ford. Jennifer explained that a month prior, Jesse had obtained a fraudulent title loan in her name on the 2008 Ford. The initial loan amount was $6,600, but it became delinquent and the balance owed had grown to $8,393. Jennifer further said that Jesse had a gambling addiction, and earlier that year, she'd lost more than $40,000 at the casino before being put on a ban list. The police went back to speak to Jessie, and she admitted that she used to have a gambling addiction, which she claimed was the reason she began obtaining money fraudulently from those payday loan stores. Jessie was arrested on one count each of bail jumping, felony misappropriation of ID information to obtain something of value, and resisting or obstructing an officer. But Jessie just could not stay out of trouble. In September of 2010, she got caught creating a fraudulent savings account in the name of a friend's mother. To do that, she stole the woman's identifying information while living with the woman's daughter. Jessie used this information to set up a fraudulent bank account, and then she tried to add herself to the account. But she was caught and arrested on one count of felony forgery and 2 counts of felony bail jumping. Again, she was let out of jail, and again, she could not get her shit together. Court documents state that in October of 2010, Jessie attempted to pay an outstanding hotel bill with a fraudulent cashier's check. When officers confronted Jessie about the fraudulent check, she lied about her identity and claimed to be Jennifer. When they told her they knew she was lying, she admitted that she had indeed lied. During a search of Jessie's person, officers found 4 very obviously fake checks. Jessie admitted that she had printed the checks herself, and she was arrested for felony forgery, and this time, finally, she was kept in jail. Jessie eventually pleaded guilty to many of the charges against her, and she was sentenced to 1 year in prison and 7 years of probation. Jessie served her prison time and was released on probation in 2016. She was still on that probation more than 2 years later when Lynn was killed. Understandably, all of this information was highly concerning to the police. They started to wonder if Lynn had been one of Jessie's victims. Had Jessie been stealing from Lynn, and could that have led to her death? Based on this information, along with statements from multiple people who knew Lynn and didn't believe she was suicidal or would have overdosed, the medical examiner's office decided to request multiple toxicology reports in Lynn's case, not just the run-of-the-mill ones. According to court documents and CBS News, Lynn's toxicology report came back in January of 2019. Those results showed that Lynn had no alcohol in her system, but she did have at least 5 medications in her blood. While the medications were at therapeutic levels, some of them were not medicines that Lynn was supposed to be taking at the time. They'd been discontinued by her doctors. Furthermore, none of the crushed pills found on Lynn or on the plate next to her were actually present in her system. But that wasn't even the most shocking part. Lynn also had a fatal dose of tetrahydrozoline, which is the main ingredient in eye drops, in her blood. The medical examiner noted that it would be impossible to reach that level of tetrahydrozoline in the blood through normal use in the eyes, so it had to have been ingested orally. In case you didn't know, tetrahydrozoline is safe when used in the eyes, but if ingested orally, it does become toxic. It can cause drowsiness, lethargy, and other effects, including death, if too much is consumed. And we've covered a case about this, so definitely go listen to that one. It's not this kind of movie, you get the shits kind of deal. Tetrahydrozoline can be extremely dangerous. Court documents state that the tetrahydrozoline results were surprising, not only because most people do not drink Visine, but also because there were no eye drop bottles found near Lynn's body when the police arrived. Now, this led the medical examiner to believe that Lynn had been poisoned and that the entire scene had been staged to try and make it look like she had overdosed on pills. The medical examiner considered the possibility that the pills found in Lynn's system were not taken willingly. Instead, it was possible that the pills were forcibly administered after she was heavily sedated by the eye drops. The medical examiner determined that the medications in Lynn's system, along with a range of health conditions including hypertension, liver disease, and obstructive pulmonary disease, all contributed to Lynn's death. However, the eye drops were way more of a problem than the prescription medications found in her system, and it was possible that the medications may have even amplified the effects of that tetrahydrozoline. Because of all of these factors, the medical examiner concluded that Lynn's cause of death was tetrahydrozoline poisoning, and her manner of death was homicide, not suicide, and not an accident. With these new findings, the investigation into Lynn's death was reopened. According to court documents, in March of 2019, about 5 months after her death, Jessie and her mother, Jennifer, went to the sheriff's department to ask some questions. Jessie mentioned that she'd been calling the medical examiner's office. She had done it multiple times, asking about the toxicology results for Lynn. But they told her that she needed to go to the police and talk to them. Detectives said they couldn't share any results with her, but they'd be happy to talk to her and her mom. They agreed. Detectives asked Jessie how she started working with Lynn, and she explained that Lynn had been best friends with her mom, Jennifer, for Jessie's entire life. She described Lynn as being like an aunt or even a second mother to her. Jessie said that she started working as Lynn's caregiver after Jennifer got too busy. She claimed that in the last 6 months of Lynn's life, she'd been at Lynn's home every other day to care for her, but in the 2 weeks leading up to her death, she was visiting Lynn twice a day. Jessie again claimed that she was the only person close to Lynn when she died. Jessie explained, she pretty much blew everybody off possible in the end. She'd say, "No, I don't want to see anybody." According to Jessie and her mother, Lynn had become so withdrawn that she didn't even want to talk to her ex-boyfriend Jim when he called. Jennifer told detectives, Lynn said, "Do not tell him. I don't want him here. I don't want to see him." Jessie added, Lynn didn't like the way she looked. She didn't want people around. Court documents state that Jessie went on to describe many medical ailments that Lynn had prior to her death. She said Lynn was very frustrated that doctors were never able to diagnose or effectively treat her conditions. Jessie questioned whether Lynn died of medical reasons or whether her death was a suicide. She then said she leaned more towards suicide because Lynn was sick of being sick and having no answers. After this interview, a detective spoke to Jessie's boyfriend, who I'm gonna call Steve. They asked him questions about Jessie's relationship with Lynn, and what Steve had to say didn't exactly line up with all the things Jessie had just told police. According to court documents, Steve told detectives that before Lynn was hospitalized, she and Jessie would talk on the phone every day. However, Jessie would only go see her in person maybe 1 or 2 times a month. Steve said that in May of 2018, Jessie texted him saying that Lynn had gotten very sick and was in a coma in the hospital after overdosing. From that moment until Lynn's death in October, Jessie claimed that Lynn was in that coma. During this 5-month period, Steve said Jesse had started spending more time with Lynn, visiting her approximately 2 to 3 times a week in the hospital. Now, this was the first time police had heard about Lynn being in a coma, and Jesse certainly hadn't mentioned it to police, and neither had Lynn's neighbor. In fact, if you recall, Lynn's neighbor had specifically stated that Lynn came home from the hospital prior to her death. Court documents state that after the interview with Steve, detectives looked into what he was saying about the coma and learned that Lynn was indeed never hospitalized in a coma over a 5-month period prior to her death. That's one of the easiest things to disprove ever. Jesse had obviously been lying to Steve, and he had no idea.
Your old or broken phone can let you down, but at Verizon, trade in any old phone from our top brands and get iPhone 16 Pro with Apple Intelligence with a new line on My Plan and iPad and Apple Watch Series 10. After all, you don't want your old phone to die on you when you're lost.
Perfect.
Or for your broken phone to glitch at the worst possible time.
Hey, can I get your number? Oh.
Trade in your old phone for a brand new iPhone 16 Pro, iPad, and Apple Watch. Visit Verizon.com today. Additional terms apply. Service plan required for Apple Watch and iPad.
Detectives conducted a follow-up interview with Steve, and he provided even more detail. He said that on the day Lynn was found dead, Jesse had sent him a text that morning claiming that Lynn had died from the coma and that she was going to go over there to handle everything as her power of attorney. Steve further told detectives that on January 12, 2019, Jesse claimed that she had been poisoned with Vaseline while at a concert with friends. Steve explained that a few hours after Jesse got home from the concert, she said she started to not feel so great. He didn't recall her throwing up or anything like that, but she did stay up for a period of time, and then at around 6 a.m., she drove herself to the hospital. While at the hospital, Jesse sent Steve a series of texts, and these are what they said. They said my blood pressure is really bad. I have traces of tetrahydrozoline in my blood. The doctor said that's the main ingredient in eye drops. He said people put it in people's drinks all the time. He said there's no taste to it and people don't notice. You can die from that. Jesse then texted Steve that because the doctor thought she'd been drugged with tetrahydrozoline, they notified the police. Jesse returned home after about 3 hours, and she didn't mention any follow-up with the police, and after a day, the Visine issue was never brought up again. Now, at this point, the police hadn't revealed to anyone that they knew Lynn was poisoned with Visine, so this story really stood out to them. Detectives told Steve the truth here, that Lynn was never hospitalized in a long-term coma, and according to police reports, Steve was in total shock. He broke up with Jesse after learning that information. The Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel reported that detectives also spoke to Steve's cousin, who had lived with Steve and Jesse in 2018. The cousin said that during the time he lived with them, Jesse claimed to still be working at the dental office. However, as time went on, the cousin started to suspect that Jesse no longer had a job at all. When he confronted her, she admitted that she'd been out of work for months and hadn't told Steve yet. To maintain the ruse, Jesse would put on a set of scrubs or a uniform every morning, leave the house, and then come home several hours later and act like she had been at work all day. The cousin told detectives that even without a job, Jesse still managed to spend money freely. He said it seemed like there was no end to the money she had. There was always money, a lot of spending at the bar, drinks for people, food for people. There was just constant spending. And with that, detectives started to wonder where Jesse was getting all of that money from. Had it come from Lynn? On July 9th, a search warrant was executed at Jesse's home, and she was arrested and placed on a probation and parole hold following the warrant's execution. She was transported to jail where she would stay as the investigation into Lynn's death continued. Court records state that on July 9th, Jesse sat down with detectives. They asked questions like if she had any sort of official payment agreement for taking care of Lynn, and Jesse said no. They didn't have any kind of formal agreement like that. Instead, Lynn would randomly say things like, "Oh, here's a check," or "Here's my card, buy yourself something," or "This month I'm gonna pay your rent," or "This month I'll pay your mom's car payment." Jesse claimed that Lynn was always helping everyone financially and giving money to everyone, and Lynn said that she wanted to spend all of her money while she was alive because one day she would die and that would be it. Detectives then shared the toxicology results with Jesse, revealing the presence of tetrahydrozoline in Lynn's system. Jesse straight out asked, "Do you guys think I murdered her?" The detective responded, "Did you?" To which she replied, "I swear to God I didn't. I did not." Detectives told her, "Seems you're the one who had the most to gain from this." Jesse then began explaining for the first time ever how Lynn frequently used eye drops in her eyes. Jesse said that Lynn was known for using eye drops and that she would buy 6 bottles at a time whenever she was at the store. Lynn would also make Jesse buy bottles all the time, even insisting that she bring them into the hospital when she was staying there. Jesse further said that Lynn would drink alcohol while also misusing her prescriptions, which frequently left her severely impaired. She also alleged that Lynn had abused both illegal and legal controlled substances throughout her life. Jesse then mentioned that on 3 occasions, Lynn told her, "I don't want to do this anymore." She said Lynn asked her for her help in dying, but Jesse says that she refused each time. Jesse stated that Lynn was sick of being sick and had given up prior to her death. According to court records, Jesse told detectives that she had been at Lynn's house on the morning of October 3rd, 2018, but she didn't crush up any pills for Lynn before leaving for the day. Detectives then revealed to Jesse that while Lynn's toxicology report showed all medications within therapeutic levels, it was the tetrahydrozoline that had ultimately caused Lynn's death. In response, Jesse stated, "That is what Lynn wanted." She went on to tell detectives that Lynn had looked into methods of suicide before and suggested that Lynn must have known what she was doing and wanted to go out her own way. Jesse said Lynn always did things her own way and no one was ever able to change her behavior or mind about things. Detectives then told Jesse that the medical examiner believed someone had poisoned Lynn because there were no eye drop bottles found near her body. Jesse boldly claimed that there were eye drop bottles all over the house, which just simply was not true based on crime scene photographs. Court documents state that detectives then explained that the tetrahydrozoline levels found in Lynn's system were not consistent with eye drop use in eyes, but rather oral consumption. Jesse said she had never seen Lynn drink eye drops and questioned who would even do such a thing. She then mentioned how odd it was that the other toxicology results for Lynn's medications were normal. Detectives told Jesse that the medical examiner believed that the crushed up pills and the rest of the scene were staged. Jesse firmly denied any involvement in Lynn's death, including giving her any eye drops, and insisted that she did not assist in her death in any way. Jesse then again boldly claimed that she had never heard of Visine poisoning before, which completely and wholeheartedly contradicted what her boyfriend had told police earlier. Detectives at this point believed nothing that Jesse said, and they firmly believed that she had murdered Lynn and was now clumsily covering up her tracks.
What is Dax, are you?
Tracking all our cars on Carvana Value Tracker on all our devices? Yes, Kristen, yes I am.
Well, I've been looking for my phone for...
In Dax's domain, we see all. So we always know what our cars are worth.
All of them?
All of them. Value surge, trucks up 3.9%.
That's a great offer.
I know. Sell?
Sell.
Track your car's value with Carvana Value Tracker today.
Over the next 10 days, detectives spoke with Jesse 5 more times. And each time they spoke, Jesse had a new and completely unbelievable story to tell. But what she said in those interviews will have to wait until next week. For photos pertaining to this case, check out Lynn's highlight at the top of my Instagram profile at @TheHeatherAshley, and join me there on the first Monday of every month at 2 p.m. Eastern, where you go live with me and we talk about today's case and all other true crime cases on your mind. To get access to ad-free and bonus episodes, subscribe to our Apple Premium or head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/BigMadTrueCrime, where for just $2 whole a month, your episodes are totally ad-free. If you love the podcast, feel free to leave a review. It makes my day every single time. And if you have a case you'd like to hear covered, please share it with Big Mad True Crime on social media, because all cases are covered by listener request. I'll be bringing you a brand new case next week, and I cannot wait. But until then, we out. All right, guys, we are officially at the end of this episode, which means that it's time for me to share a review that made my entire day. I recorded this, still kind of sick, and wasn't planning on doing it, so I didn't ask Kyle for reviews, but I found one I haven't read yet that he sent me from before. Okay. It's from Rapman3, and I love your name. It says, "Bless you, sweet angel. I've been unable to stand the way most podcasts have covered the Marjorie Nugent case, to the point where I get infuriated and have to turn them off because they all seem to follow the Bernie is amazing narrative, and it makes me so angry. Thank you for being the single sensible podcast out there covering this case and the way it should be. Bernie is a murderer who shot an old woman in the back while stealing from her, and way too many people are ignoring that fact. I sincerely love you for the way you covered the case. Bravo." I love you, first of all, for caring about that. That case is tough because, I mean, you do have people who say negative things, but it'll never negate the fact that he stole from her and he killed an old woman, period. So I super disappointed in Jack Black. So fucking bummed about that. And how kind of Hollywood picked this up and rallied behind somebody who did a really terrible thing. No matter how you slice it, and this is coming up a lot in different cases, with, I guess, the media really taking a hold of true crime, where just because you don't like someone doesn't mean that you can do illegal shit. It doesn't give you the right to take somebody's life. There are so many other avenues for you to take. You don't get a movie out of it and get praised for being a piece of shit. So, I love you. Thank you for that. Okay. If you guys have made it this far, we're at the hot take. And because this is a two-parter, I know I give you two two-parters in a row. I'm the worst. It's hard to do a hot take because I don't want to go like the rest of it. But this is the second tetrahydrozoline case that we've covered. The first one was the Hunsucker case. One day I'll talk about all of that. It pains me that I haven't been able to talk about it this far. Hopefully soon I'll be able to talk about it. Anywho, don't let movies make you think that putting eye drops in something is going to give somebody the shits and it'll be a great day. Like, that's not how it works. Tetrahydrozoline can be so damaging to your body, the nervous system, your heart, your organs, so bad. So don't fuck around with tetrahydrozoline. And also, the idea that this dumbass decides she's going to call the medical examiner's office and ask about toxicology reports. Excuse me? And also, what a specific thing to claim to have been poisoned with while at a concert. Now, generally speaking, in my experience researching poisoning by tetrahydrozoline, which has been significant actually, it is done over a period of time. The damage is done over a period of time. So the idea that you got heinously poisoned with tetrahydrozoline once, and the doctors even tested for it is asinine to even try and believe for her little boyfriend thing that she tried to pull. I call bullshit. And then to be like, I've never even heard of eye drop poisoning. Then bitch, don't text about it because the receipts be existing. Okay? Stupid. So stupid. But often criminals are. Unfortunately, good human beings keep fucking coming in contact with shitty ass people. And here we are again. Okay, I love you guys. I'm going to record part 2 now. Okay, love you.